talk will be in English. Hope that's not a problem for anyone. Welcome to IT Talks. I'm excited to start off the evening together with you, and I'm really happy that that you've decided to come to my talk, because this means that there is some interest in SEO within IT. My name is Rens. I'm an SEO specialist here at TVH, and search engine optimization is a powerful way to generate more leads and more sales. And I'm here to convince you that it's not only the job of a digital marketeer, but also of a web developer, and to pique your interest high enough so that when you get to the office tomorrow morning, the first thing you'll think about is my presentation. Today, we're going to talk about, we're going to start off with some basics. What is SEO? Why is it important? Then we're going to deep dive within two aspects of technical SEO, that is performance and JavaScript. And within performance, we're going to do an audit and see some common optimization tips that you can do for your website. So I'm going to start off the day with a question: what is the best place to hide a dead body? And I'm sure that some of you might already know the answer. But
second page of Google.
Yeah, it's the second page of Google. Why? Because nobody goes to the second page anymore. They will either change their search query, or they will find the thing that they want on the first page. But to get to the first page, you have to do SEO. So what is SEO? So SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, which is basically improving your website, improving your visibility in the organic search results, so that you gain a better position or be featured in a snippet, so that when somebody searches something that's related to your business, that he or she will land on your web page and not on your competitors. So in 1999, when my parents' washing machine broke down, their journey was pretty simple. They would go to the shop where they probably previously bought their washing machine. They would tell the shop owner their problem. He or she would tell them, well, you'll need a new washing machine, and chances are big that they would go home with a washing machine. But 20 years later, when my washing machine will break down, my journey will look a lot different. So I will not go to the shop straight away. First, I will look on the internet and search for the problem that the washing machine is having. And I will check to see if I can find a solution so that I can fix it myself. And if I can't fix it myself, then I will start to go to websites, web shops, start reading some reviews, comparing prices, and only then, if I don't buy it online, only then will I go to the shop to buy the product or washing machine that I already know. And to give you an idea, Google receives over 75,000 searches each second. So by the end of this presentation, that will be around 135 million. So within the search engine result page, you have two different types of results, which is the paid search results and the search and organic search results, which we'll talk about today because that's related to SEO. To illustrate my earlier question, you have to succeed for SEO, you have to be in the top 3. If you look on the left side, you see the click-through rate, and on the bottom, it's the position your website is in the search in the result page, and you see that the moment you hit the top 3, top 5 maybe, there's a heavy decrease in click-through rate. So if you want to succeed, you have to be in the top 3 of the first page, and the second page or lower will not be good enough. So search engine optimization is not an exact science. So Google works with these algorithms to determine for which keyword it will position your website, but nobody has an idea how these algorithms work, and if that didn't make our job hard enough, those algorithms are always changing. So those red lines are fluctuations between a search and result page, so that when there's a lot of fluctuations, there's a lot of changes within the positions, then it's probably because there's a Google update or tweak to the algorithm. But Google is trying to be a bit more transparent, and lately they have been trying to announce the updates up front. We will still not know exactly how the search or the algorithms work, but at least we'll have something to work with. So, how does Googlebot determine how to rank your website for specific search queries? In short, Google will start crawling your website to start visiting your web pages, and it will start reading your content. It's going to put it into the index, and into the index, then it's going to determine for which position it's going to rank your website. So within SEO, there's about the three pillars of SEO they are called. So there's on-page SEO, which is everything related to content. So there's off-page SEO, which is everything related to link building. And there's technical SEO, which is probably the thing that you're most interested in. And within technical SEO, there's a lot of different things that impact your SEO. But for today, we're going to talk about two things specifically, which is the performance of your website and JavaScript. So we're going to start off with performance because this is the perfect example of why search engine optimization isn't only the job of a digital marketer, but also of a web developer. Why is it important? Well, we wouldn't be talking about it today if it wasn't a ranking factor. So the performance of your web page has a direct impact on your rankings. But a question to all of you, who here has left a website because it didn't load fast enough? It's quite a lot of hands. So what I'm trying to say is that you should not optimize your website for the rankings and for Google, but you should do it for your visitors. Because on the left side, you will see the bounce rate. So the bounce rate is when somebody lands on your web page, but doesn't do anything meaningful or view a second page. And on the bottom, you will see the time it takes for your website to load. So the longer it takes for your website to load, the higher the bounce rate will be. And for some websites, this can have a pretty big impact, like Amazon, because they're so big. But of course, take these results or these numbers with a grain of salt, but it's actually pretty logic. If more visitors bounce on your website, then they will not buy on your website. If they don't buy on your website, at the end of the road, you will have less revenue. So Google has created a small tool which basically tells you how much money you would potentially gain if you were to improve your website. So if you needed maybe to convince some managers to put performance on the priority list, this might be able to help you out. Within performance, there's a lot of different things and aspects that impact the speed of your website. So first of all, we have everything that's related to the speed of the internet, which you can't really do anything about. Everything that's related to a good server and good infrastructure behind the website. The CMS that you're using, plugins that you're using, models that you're using, extensions that you're using as well, can also impact the time of page loads. And last, what's also important is everything that's related to JavaScript, images, and CSS can also have a big impact on your SEO and your performance. And for today, we're going to focus on the last part, because I think that will be the most interesting for everybody. So, to start with your website, optimizing everything, you have to know what's wrong and why is my page of my website loading so slowly. So that's why you have to do an audit. But before you do an audit, you will need some tools to do the audit with. So one of the tools is Google Lighthouse, which is a tool built in the Chrome DevTools. You also have Google PageSpeed Insights, which is basically, it runs the same engine as Google Lighthouse, but it's a bit more accessible for everybody since it's just a web page that you can use. Another tool is Google Analytics, which is also a great tool to find the most important pages, but it also has a speed report, which can show you in a fast way which are your most or the slowest websites or the fastest pages. You can also use Google Search Console, which is has a bit the same function as Google Analytics, but it's a pretty new report. And it's still in an experimental phase, as they call it, Google, so the results might not be as accurate yet, but I wanted to include it because maybe in the future it will be a great tool to use as well. And you also have web page tests that you can use, which basically gives you a waterfall chart of what's happening when your page is loading. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I've included a useful guide on how to use it. It's 70 pages long, but it's well worth the read. And some honorable mentions, such as ping them as GT metrics. So, before performing an audit, there's a few things that you have to keep in mind to not mess up your data. And the first thing is the circumstances of when you are performing the audit, such as the device. Are you going to do the audit on your mobile device? Are you going to do it on a desktop? And maybe important to know is that the same page takes about 80% longer to load on mobile as the same page would on desktop. So my advice would be to maybe try to do the audit on your mobile and optimize that one. So another thing you have to keep in mind is the speed where you are performing the audit with. Not everybody has glass fiber Wi-Fi to get a fast connection, so think if your users on 4G, 3G, or even 2G, depending on where your visitors are located. And the last circumstance is use a clean incognito window without any extensions, because extensions will impact the way a page loads. So the second thing you have to keep in mind is that page speed is a page level metric. So this means that even if you have a good score or a good performance score on your home page, that doesn't mean that your best performing or most important product page also has a good score, which makes things a bit complicated. But a good tip is to start off with your most important pages. And maybe a small tip, there's this tool called Screaming Frog, which is an SEO tool. And what this tool does is basically crawling a website, pulling in all the data from specific URLs, all the SEO data from specific URLs. And the nice thing about this, in a recent update, you can connect the Google PageSpeed API to the Screaming Frog. So this means that you can actually audit in bulk. And Screaming Frog is free up until 500 URLs. But with some smart configuration, you might be able to extend that, but the tool costs like 180 euros for a year, which is not that expensive. So we are going to perform, or I performed, or how we are going to perform an audit with Google Lighthouse, because I think this is one of the most interesting tools that you should use when you're doing an audit, if you're doing it page by page. And so we have to, first of all, find the Google Lighthouse. So this is located under the Audit tab within the Chrome DevTools. And the second step would be to run the audit and select some of the options for a specific web page that you want to do the audit for. And when you ran the audit, you will get a screen like this, which is basically the overall. So first of all, you will see the overall performance score of your web page. And you'll also see some interesting metrics, such as the first contentful paint, first meaningful paint, and the time to interactive. So the first contentful paint is basically when something starts to show up when your page is loading. The first meaningful paint is when there's actually some content starting to load, such as a font, text, or an image. And the time to interactive is basically when that user can start using your website, because there's nothing as much frustrating as seeing a web page loaded, but that you can't use it yet. And when you scroll down the page, Google will also give you a whole bunch of recommendations to improve your performance score and your page speed in general. So then it's up to the developer to start looking what's the best way to optimize it. And step 5, the last step, would obviously be make the recommended change and run the audit again. And something to keep in mind is you should always run the second audit under the same circumstances, because otherwise your data will be a bit skewed. Also maybe interesting to know is that you should only do one change and then run the audit again. Otherwise, if you do multiple changes at once, you will have no idea what made the biggest impact. So for today, I ran an audit for everybody who's here today on their websites, and I've compiled all the data into an Excel, and then I want to ask you who here thinks that overall performance score of this group is higher than 50. Nobody's confident in their own website. So the average was 34 on 100, so yeah, let's be honest, that's not really that good. And the highest score was 89. I don't remember which website, but that's obviously a good score. And the lowest was 3. Yeah. Maybe interesting to know as well that 53% of your visits are more likely to leave when the page takes longer than 3 seconds to load. And when we look at the average for today's group of the first contentful paint, so when actually something starts happening when something's loading, that's 4 seconds. So that's 1 second higher than the average, which means that we are, and I'm including our own as well, we are all losing visitors as we speak. And there were also some people from high school schools here. I'm not sure if there's anybody in the room. No, they maybe didn't come up. But the winner of the schools for today was Arteval, which has had the highest score at that moment. So when auditing your website, there were a lot of things that I encountered, and I compiled them into a list of some common optimization tips that I think might be useful for most of your websites, but of course this depends on your own website, so you have to do the audit and see which ones fits the best for your website. So the first thing is, well, I'm going to talk first about everything that's related to images and image optimization. So the first thing that you can do is do lazy loading, which is basically loading images only when you need them, and when you visit a website, I don't want to download images that are all the way at the bottom. This may be interesting to know is that Google Chrome now has native lazy loading attributes. So this means that you will not need JavaScript to do lazy loading, which is a win-win when talking about performance, but note that this probably will not work for other browsers such as Firefox. Another thing is image compression. So this is an example from somebody in the room. So we can see that the original size of the image is 14 megabytes, and the compressed size is also 14 megabytes. So this means that when I'm on my mobile phone on 4G and I'm visiting a website, then basically I have to download the whole image, and that's not really that good. Another thing is adaptive serving. So not everybody has high-speed connections, and if you want somebody to load a high-definition video on their mobile phone and they're on 2G, then that's not really a great user experience. And with adaptive serving, you can, based on the different connections, you can serve somebody something else. For example, with Facebook, when you're on a lower connection, Facebook will show you the MBasic, the mobile basic version, which is less CSS, less images, pretty simple, with really fast on slow connections. If you're on a high-speed connection, you will just see the normal Facebook like we all know it. And if you want to know more about image optimization, I've included, there's an ebook online which pretty much has a lot of interesting information that might be of use to all of you. So we started with images, now we're going to CSS, and one of the biggest things that has the biggest impact on your first meaningful paint, so when somebody actually that matters starts showing up, is fonts. Because the way that fonts work is that they only show when they are completely downloaded. So until the font is completely downloaded, you will not see anything of content on your website. But with the font display swap, you can actually tell the browser, hey, my font isn't downloaded yet, but please show my content. Then it will put some sort of placeholder content until their font is loaded, and when it's loaded, it will change the font. But with this, the visitor is seeing something pretty much as fast as possible, and seeing something happen on your phone will increase the chances that you're staying. Another thing is inlining your critical CSS. So basically, this comes down to showing something as soon as possible. Something that can also help is text compression. You can obviously save quite a bit or increase your performance of your web page with this. And as last thing is unused CSS. So make sure that everything that's in your style sheets are actually being used, and if not on this page, on another page, but please, anything that's in there from legacy code or whatever, just throw it out. Every little bit can have an impact. And when doing audits, there was one thing that was pretty bad with everybody, including our own, and that's everything that's related to JavaScript. And JavaScript has the biggest impact on when the phone is actually ready to use, or the page is ready to use. So as with CSS, you also have unused JavaScript. So when you're making me download JavaScript, because JavaScript is the most expensive asset when loading a page, actually make sure that that what you're making me download actually does something on your website. Otherwise, it's just a bit of a waste of resources. You can load or defer JavaScript asynchronously, load asynchronously or defer it, which can also help with prioritization, etc. You can split up your code through some component loading. This is an example of Google Shopping. So instead of loading everything at once, they divide it into 3 parts. First, everything that's above the full JavaScript, then everything to make it interactive, and as the last thing, they load in everything, the other features of Google Shopping. Another thing you can do is give some attributes to certain links, which are prefetch, preconnect, and preload, and which you can tell a browser to start downloading little bits already before somebody clicks a link on that page. Just maybe interesting to know, just know that when you're doing this and somebody does not visit your page or the next page, then it will already have downloaded all those files, and if you don't care about their mobile data, that's fine, but yeah. If you do, maybe think about it. And just to close off performance, some common optimization tips. Make sure that your changes affect all your browsers, or else we'll foresee fallbacks. The second, I think, is the most important one, is deliver critical resources as soon as possible. Others can be loaded in later, and obviously plan your web or your site architecture for performance at the start, and not start optimizing later. So we've come to the last part, which is JavaScript. And remember my first slides when we talked about how Googlebot works? Well, if Googlebot has to execute and render JavaScript, there's a new step that comes with it. So the same principle happens. So Google starts crawling your website, starts reading your content, puts it in the index, but then it's like, wait a minute, where's the content? Oh, this is JavaScript. And then it's like, I cannot read this yet. So they put it into the rendering phase. And then it's up to Google to execute and render the content. If Google can succeed with this, they will put it back into the index, and only then will it be able to rank for certain keywords. And I put the emphasis on can because Google gives no guarantee that it will load or that it will render and execute your JavaScript. So this means if Google does not do it, you will not show up in Google or any search engine actually at all. And if Google can do it, then it can take up to weeks maybe hours, maybe weeks before the content is that Google has read the content or knows what it's about. So, how do you know if Google can index your JavaScript and render it? So the first step is pretty simple. You have to view your website without JavaScript and see which content is not visible here. So in this example, we can see that there's a huge content block missing. And the second thing you have to do is the content visible in the HTML? With the resource, you can do that pretty easy. And when we look at this example, you can clearly see that it is. The second thing you have to do is, okay, it's visible in the view source. Has Google seen my web page yet? And is it into the index of Google? And the way you can do that is with the search operator and just searching for the content. And in this case, it is. So in the end, Google can read your content and everything's fine. When we look at the second example, we do the same steps. We view it with our JavaScript. You see that there's a lot of content missing. Is this content visible into the HTML? And in this case, it's not. So it's just generated by JavaScript. And when we do the same thing and look for it in Google, well, the site is not showing up. So either Google has not yet rendered it, or it never will. So my advice here would be to avoid generating content completely in JavaScript and make sure that it is in the HTML, and this will save you a lot of headaches of Google not finding your website or your content. So to close off this talk, SEO is a must-have knowledge for developers in 2019, 2020, or even before that. Mind the performance, because it will hurt your rankings, but more importantly, it might hurt your revenue at the end of the day. And be smart about using JavaScript. Don't make Google render and execute it, or you might not be found at all in Google. So I want to thank you for listening, and I think we still have a few minutes for questions, if there are. And if there's no questions, then you can always send me afterwards if something pops up, or at the bar later today.